I just want to start by talking about how important this kind of symposium is. I was in Berlin on a panel on Wednesday night, and one of the reflections I had was being a Canadian and being a Canadian in Europe, learning from Europe, and trying to understand the relationship between how to think about sustainability within the context of architecture, landscape, and design. And ultimately, I think the biggest task before us all is how to build sustainable cities. We've learned a lot from Europe, and the reason is, in my analysis, is because of the oil crisis in the 1970s, which shocked Europe. And we've studied very carefully the kind of transformations of the design and construction industry and planning in the European context, and really thinking about how integrated all that thinking has to be. I think even from the object up until the urban field, there needs to be a new kind of integration, and I think this is where Transsolar has had an impact. Whether it's a maximum impact or not, it's been an incredibly positive impact. And we looked at a lot of ways in which whole countries in Europe have developed their national policies on energy and architecture and cities. Countries like Denmark, countries like Germany. But the difference in North America is that we don't have any of those policies. And even though we are all living on the same world, we're living in very different circumstances, and the cost of energy is very different in North America. It's much cheaper. And it raises sort of all these issues about who is learning from whom. You know, what we have in Canada is, I think, the most remarkable model for democracy in the world. I think we have an open immigration policy that I think you can't find anywhere else in the world. We're still growing. And we read every day the kind of stories about the Eurozone and what's happening, and the end of my talk in Berlin was, what is the future of the European city? In fact, what's the future of Europe? And there are larger issues of sustainability, and you can say, how does that relate to design? But the social dimension of how you think about how we live together is ultimately the foundation upon which design can be based. Stephen is an incredible poet. I think Stefan is the European architect who is the exemplar of how to integrate design thinking. I think Greg Lynn's objects really show the fruits of huge amounts of research and thinking about technology. This film is a film that was commissioned for Manitoba Hydro in Winnipeg. It's a climate of extremes. It has minus 40 degrees Celsius. It has plus 35 degrees Celsius in the summer, and it's very, very humid. And what we were able to do is to suspend a little bit of our sort of preconceptions about what the building would be. And we worked with an integrated design team that developed a building that that breathes, that is really, in a way, a building that responds to its climate in a way that no other building we've designed does. And therefore, it's interesting for us because it took us out of our normal practice because we were working with Transsolar. Transsolar identified very quickly in the process that Winnipeg gets more solar radiation than any other major city in Canada. And this is the south facade. It also has a windrose that is due south. So you can see it's a series of stacked six-story atriums that face due south. These are the lungs of our building, and where you see that horizontal line, that's where the fresh air, which is coming from the south, enters the building. Heating and cooling is decoupled from natural ventilation. We are able to provide, using raised floor, again, European displacement ventilation, and a solar chimney on the north end of the building, we're able to generate 100% fresh air 24/7, no recirculated air. We have a building that has hybrid ventilation, so on days like today here, in kind of moderate temperature days, you begin to allow this building to breathe. We have 2 weather stations on the building, one on the high roof and one on the podium. It is a tower on a podium And the tower itself is, in plan, is a capital letter A, and that in the wings of the A are clear span lofts, office lofts, which are incredibly flexible. Flexibility is one of the criteria for the future. It's a concrete building. It has radiant cooling and heating. It doesn't have as many geothermal holes in the ground as Stephen Hall's projects in China because it's on an urban block. So we have 240 holes drilled 400 feet into the ground. It has a dynamic buffer zone on the outside of the wall. This is a west facade, pure west facade, and it's double glazed on the outside and single glazed on the inside. And there's about 1 meter of space. You're looking at the east side. Has very little sheet metal work, and it really represents, in my mind, the hybrid between European thinking that has been developed over the last 30 years and European technologies which we don't have available to us. So it's a kind of a hybrid of thinking brought together through an integrated design process. This is a thermographic film that Deco Dawson made that sort of portrays the life of the building in terms of heat and radiant heat. And this building is able to command the landscape. It's all relative height. I mean, it won the best tall buildings in the Americas at the height of 23 floors, and I think it really caused a stir. I mean, it's not about height. It's about habitat. It's really about integrated thinking and how you can make, in my mind, a vertical campus. I think that's the way you can make intensified, denser cities, but to do it in a way that preserves the idea of the local. There's a great hall under the west wing that provides a public route right through the building. And this space, which is really the lobby for 2,000 people, is also a social space for the city. The city itself is very small. It's 730,000 people, half the size of Stuttgart, or just over half the size maybe. In the lungs of the building, we have interconnected stairs. And it's very important that the people who inhabit the building understand and experience the sustainable aspects of the building. That's the integration that we're looking for, that it's not something that's added onto the building, it's embedded in the building. It's very much part of the building fabric, and that you can see everything. You're seeing water coming down mylar strips that sit in those atriums, and those are the humidification and dehumidification system. We said, why couldn't we actually make all of that visible? Why couldn't we make a kind of experience of the systems themselves and try to achieve a poetic that is embedded in everyday life related to integrated systems? Some of the open workspace, very North American style, but they have abundant daylight. We have achieved for most of the building what Europeans would call daylight autonomy, and it's extraordinary. There are times you don't have to have any lighting on at all, and that's of course the way you reduce energy consumption. We were asked to reduce energy 60% below our model national energy code. It's never been done, and now we're tracking ahead of our model. We're verging on 70% because of the way in which we've thought through all of the systems, the high performance envelope, the geothermal system, and the natural ventilation system. These are bicycles in the garage. Deco Dawson is an assistant. He's assisted Guy Madden on many of his films. Maybe some of you know his work, but he's a terrific filmmaker. And so the project was trying to integrate the city into the building, and the way in which the public spaces inside and around the building have been condensers of public and community life within Winnipeg is also part of the sustainability thinking. We did not put in a large cafeteria for 2,000 people, and that means that people have to go out into the city. And Winnipeg is a city that needs revitalization, and part of the agenda for this project was to use this project to really revitalize a city that's in great need right now. The other thing we did is we didn't put very much parking in. This is very unusual in a North American office building. We put in 150 spaces for 2,000 people. There's the water feature. It goes 6 floors. There are 88 mylar strands that fall into a pool, and humid air condenses on it in the summer, and then we chill it in the winter. But what happened with the parking was that one of the things that Winnipeg has is a lot of surface parking lots. What's happened in the building are two things. One is that it was a consolidation from 14 suburban buildings into one downtown building, and that has had a great effect on the life of the downtown in terms of safety, in terms of vibrancy, animation, restaurants, and bars. Because we don't have a cafeteria, there are many, many restaurants that are experiencing a life now that they didn't have. The other thing that we found out is that there has been a drop in absenteeism and sick days. You know, everyone's looking for metrics. For this building, I actually don't need the metrics myself. I just have been in the building and talked to people about what they experience in the workplace. But what they've realized is that it's reduced for 2,000 people the number of sick days by a day and a half per person. And within that, there is some sort of productivity measure that people are really looking at. This building is being studied. It's visited by every school child in Winnipeg and hopefully in the province. I think one of the things about thinking about buildings as exemplars is that they have a didactic function. They have a poetic function, but they have a didactic function as well. And the building should be on the curriculum of public education systems. It should be something that people can see, talk about, and really experience. And I think that's how you create change. I think it's through education. So my position would be that it is important, the work that Transsolar has done. It has had an impact. It has produced some of the best exemplars in the world. The real issue is how to get young people, particularly young people, to really understand and experience what the future could be. And that certainly in North America, I've never seen a greater spike in the number of young people who are going into post-secondary education, who are really trying to understand their role in the future as agents of change. But buildings have a role to play. One building can make a difference, unless you're going to go chase us into becoming politicians. But I think the best we can do is to make objects that really express a future and actually really embody the world we want. Thank you very much.